Hi, everyone. I'm Joseph Ayala, and I am one of your career coaches here at CSUN. And today the topic is negotiating a raise, practical tips for a successful conversation. Now, just to set the stage, I do teach part-time here at CSUN, but I have a full-time job outside of the university and have had full-time jobs outside of the university for probably the last 30 years. And so the experience that I bring to this conversation is one of practical knowledge and experience of things that I've done, both as someone who's asking for a raise, but also now someone who is in charge of being able to give raises to employees as well. It's an important conversation to have because as you enter the professional workplace, you will find an opportunity to negotiate your salary or to negotiate a raise. And that is something we're going to talk about today. As we get started, negotiating is important because many employees avoid these conversations due to discomfort or fear of rejection. Yet those who negotiate are more likely to secure higher salaries and benefits over time. What you're going to find when you enter your workforce is that some companies will say that every year, this is how much increase you're going to get across the board. It doesn't matter what position you play in the company, but they might say everyone's going to get a 3% increase. That's what everyone's going to get. And I've worked for companies who have a policy similar to that. However, more common is the situation I'm in right now. The situation I was in my previous organization was the same way, where there's a lot of flexibility based upon your performance in regards to how much raise you're going to get during that yearly pay increase session. And so it's important that you become an advocate for yourself and that you are able to feel comfortable presenting to your manager why you should get that raise and have the supporting information to put together a good story for them. Negotiating raises not only increases your income, but also demonstrates your confidence, ambition, and awareness of your market value. This is really key as you start your career because let's say, and just to start off, we'll just start off with some numbers at you're making $50,000 a year. Maybe when you negotiate a raise after you've been working there a while, now you're making 55,000. Well, that's important because everything is now based upon that higher salary of $55,000, which means, let's say the next year, they say everyone's getting a 3% increase. Your 3% increase is now based upon $55,000, not $50,000. So you're already, again, making more money and moving up the scale. In addition, if you're going to a different company for a different job, or even getting a promotion within the same company, you're now starting at that $55,000 as opposed to $50,000. So what I mean by that, let's say that you're working at a job and you had now negotiated $55,000 and they're going to give you a promotion. You're going to become a supervisor, let's say. Well, now they know you make $55,000. So when you get that promotion, maybe they're going to give you 60,000. If you had stayed at 50,000, maybe they would have only given you 55,000. So you're always working through this negotiation of moving your base salary forward because everything else then starts to build upon that. It becomes now your negotiating number, and you always want that to continue to grow and to get higher as your career progresses over time. Remember, no one cares more about your career than you do. What I mean by this is employers and companies are not enthusiastic about giving you more money. That's not what they're there to do. So if you are not advocating for yourself, they're probably just going to give you that bare minimum of salary increases each year because in their mind, you're happy with that. It's up to us to advocate for ourselves. You want to prepare very thoroughly before you go to your manager and ask for a raise. The first thing is you need to know what people in the job you're doing are getting paid at other companies. There are websites like Glassdoor, PayScale, LinkedIn Salary Insights, where you can find average salaries for your role in your industry and in your location. So that let's say if you're getting paid $10,000 less than what the industry average is or the industry expectation is, you now have that information available to show your manager how the pay you're getting might be out of sync with what the industry average is. You might ask, what if I do that research and I find that I'm already at the average or already getting paid the same amount that is typical for, the role I'm in? Well, then you want to be prepared with your accomplishments. Yes, other people in the industry, even at your company, might get paid the same amount of money. However, what you want to be able to show is your value. You want to document major achievements such as project outcomes, process improvements, revenue growth, or positive client feedback. For example, as you start to work in your professional field, you might get a message, either an email, let's say, from people you work with. It might say, thank you for all of the work that you did on this project, the time you put in, the deliverable that you created was amazing and really helped the client think positively about our company. It might be someone you actually work with, that's an internal accomplishment or an internal endorsement that that person just gave you. You might also have a job that you're dealing with the public or with other companies, and they send you a message and say how great you are. What I would encourage you to do is when you start that job, create a little folder. It could be a folder within your email that's named accomplishments or positive feedback. And anytime you get any of this feedback, just file it away. If you complete a project, maybe you create an Excel document where you're just going to track all of the projects that you've completed with the date. And when you finish that project or have a really good contribution for the company or an accomplishment, add it to the spreadsheet. Because what you're going to find as you start working is time goes by really fast. You will simply go from one project to the other, and you'll forget what you actually did or accomplished. But if you have that Excel document, you now have it written down as you're completing it. If you start documenting it with little paragraphs, maybe not even little paragraphs, just little keywords to help you remember, you now have a whole folder of things that you've accomplished, of great things that people have said about you, both internally and externally. And now you have a whole treasure trove of things that you can bring to your manager and say, look, this is the value I brought to the company. These are the contributions I've made. You also want to know your employer situation. Understand if the company is in a good financial position, which can impact timing and the likelihood of a raise. The company I work for, which shall remain nameless for the sake of this presentation, a few months ago, they were going through a pretty financially difficult time. We had to tell the market or the investors that we were not going to hit the numbers in terms of how much money we were going to bring into the company that we had previously told them. The powers that be at the company, such as the CEO of the company, had to let them know that in order to recover some of the money that we had lost, that what we were going to do is a big layoff, that 10% of the employees were going to be laid off. During this time, one of my team members that works for me, I'm his manager, came to me and asked for a raise. The timing was not good. Now, out of respect for Jay, I still went to my manager to talk through it with him. And he said exactly what I thought he would say. He said, there's no way we can give Jay a raise right now when we are laying people off. That just would not get approved. So knowing the current situation, the environment your company is in, is also very important before you start having these conversations. So understand, number one, what is the current pay or average pay for the person in your position in the industry, and use the tools that you see listed on the screen to help you find that information. Keep a folder and a list of your accomplishments, of any process improvements you've done, any positive feedback you've received, so that you have it at the ready. And always pay attention to and ask yourself, how is the company doing right now? Now, how do you know this? Right? Remember, timing is key, but how do you know how the company is doing? Well, what you're going to find is that most companies that you're going to work for are public companies, meaning that they're traded on the stock market. And because of that, they will legally have to have quarterly meetings, so 4 times a year, where they talk to the investors and tell them how the company is doing financially. When you start working for that company as an employee, you're going to get notification as to when those meetings are. Attend them virtually and listen to it, and you will easily start to understand when is the right timing. Is this a good time? Is this not a good time? Because in that meeting, they will discuss how things are going in regards to revenue. Remember, as the slide shows, timing is key. Annual review periods is a great time to bring up your raise. Most companies will give you raises once a year so that everyone in the company is getting their raises at the same time. This is a perfect opportunity to make your case and negotiate that salary increase, because it's already part of your company's process that this is the time of the year for raises. The other timing aspect is post-achievement. If you have a significant achievement, let's say you exceeded a target, exceeded a goal, you completed a project a project that made a big difference in the company. That's also a great time to have a meeting with your manager and to ask them for that raise based upon the contribution that just completed, because that accomplishment is right at the top of everyone's mind. Remember, when you're talking about achievements, the key word here is significant achievements. If you are simply just doing your everyday job, that's not significant. That's not enough to probably justify a raise simply because you're doing what you're just getting paid to do. But if there's something you're doing that goes above and beyond what the everyday expectation is, a project that maybe really impacted the company or the employees, or a really big process improvement that saved the company money, keep those in your mind. That's what's important. When we talk about timing, also remember to schedule the conversation when your manager has the time to fully engage in the conversation. Let's say that you are in a meeting with the team, including your manager, and the meeting's scheduled from 11 to 12. And the meeting ends early. It ends at 11:50. There's 10 minutes left. And you're thinking, I have 10 minutes. My manager's there. Now I'm going to talk to him. Probably not a good idea. It just means 10 minutes. He might have a meeting, or she might have a meeting that starts at 12, and they would have to cut the meeting short. Instead, schedule a meeting with your manager specifically to talk about your performance and your raise. During that meeting, all of that documentation and all of the accomplishments that you've done, you want to bring to the table. Now let's go back to the annual review period, the first point on the screen, just so you understand how it works in companies. Again, I talked earlier that sometimes, very rarely, people will just get the same salary increase per year. That's pretty rare. And I say that because when you get into the professional arena and you're working for companies, even though you might have 5 other people doing the exact same job as you, everyone's getting paid differently. It's based on experience, it's based on background, it's based upon how long they've been there, it's based upon how they negotiated their opening salary. They also might be doing something extra and on top of what the normal responsibilities of the day are. And so that's really important to know that as a baseline, everyone's getting paid differently, even though they might be doing the same job. And what happens is during the annual review period, as a manager, the manager will get a pot of money. So in real life, right, in my job, I will get an email, and I'll just make up numbers for significance of example. And the email will say, Joseph, you have $10,000 that you can use for raises for the 5 team members that you have. It's up to you, Joseph, at your discretion as to how you're going to divide that $10,000. I could say, okay, everyone's getting a $2,000 raise, right? 5 times 2 is 10. We're just going to divide it equally. Most likely, that's not going to happen. What we're going to do is we're going to look and see how much money we have, what each team member has contributed, and contributed in terms of their accomplishments and how the work performance they've done for the year. And based upon that, we'll give a higher raise to the person who has the biggest impact to the team for that year. So at the end of the day, one person might get $5,000 and the other $5,000 might be divided among the remaining 4 team members. So just know when you start working in the professional environment after college, that there is room for negotiation most of the time. The people working next to you, even in the same job, are not making the exact same amount of money as you. Start to understand and start going into your profession, when you're going to your profession, start to understand when the annual review period is so that you can talk to your manager before the annual review period starts. Because in their heads, they're already thinking, the manager is, I know the annual review period is coming, and I know I need to understand and start thinking how I'm going to allocate these raises. If you don't set up a meeting with them, and if you don't say anything, then in your manager's mind, they may be thinking he or she must be fine with the salary they're getting. I'll just give them the bare minimum because someone else presented me key items as to why they deserve this raise. So remember to advocate for yourself, understand when the timing of the year is for your specific company, and schedule a meeting to have that conversation. Now you have to be able to craft your pitch. And by that, it means you want to use data-driven language. That means that you want to reference industry, salary benchmarks, and your contributions. We talked about this a little bit, where you want to look at those different websites to understand how much someone in your industry doing your job typically makes. You also want to have all of those lists of contributions and accomplishments that I suggested you save as you're completing them. So you have both of those in your hand. You may also want to make a nice little PowerPoint that you present to your manager. How great would that be, right? That would really show that you care about what you do, what you're doing, and that you're taking this seriously. If you simply go to your manager and say, I would like a 10% increase, and they say, oh, that's great. What makes you, deserving of this? And if your answer is simply because you think you're doing a great job and you have no information to support it, it's not going to be a good argument. So you really want to make sure you're armed with as much information as possible. Stay positive. Frame your ask around your enthusiasm to contribute and grow within the company. For example, I really like working here. I've been able to contribute a lot to the company because I care about the company's growth. For example, and then list your accomplishments. Because of these accomplishments, I would like for you to consider providing me a salary increase of 5%. And that's based upon the industry benchmark for my position, as well as the contributions that I've shared with you for the job I've been doing for the past year, right? It makes a much better argument if you use the type of language and information to support what you're presenting and emphasize how your work directly impacts the team or company goals. You always want to tie it to what the company does, how you're helping to increase revenue, how you're helping to get more customers, how you're helping maybe to lower costs. All of those things are very, very important to the ears of your manager. So always focus on your value. You also want to be ready for counter arguments. They might have budget constraints. They might say the company is not doing so great. And when that happens, one of the things you want to have already prepared are some things that maybe take the place of a salary increase. Already have it in your mind of what you're willing to accept. Maybe it's flexible hours. Maybe it's being able to work from home on some days of the week. Maybe it's additional paid time off or professional development opportunities. Maybe there's a yearly conference that you would love to go to for a specific role, specific conference that's specific to the role that you have at your company. And so then you can tell your manager, if they say, sorry, we can't do a pay increase at this time, then maybe one of the counter arguments or the compromise you can make is, I understand that maybe the timing is not right for a raise, but there's a conference coming up in June that I would really like to go to. The total cost of the conference would be a certain amount of money that you've already researched. That will cover my airfare, my hotel, and my conference registration fees. Would the company be able to support me on that professional development opportunity? See, a lot of times the companies would be willing to do that where it's a one-time charge that they can afford to do, as opposed to a salary increase that's going to hit their bottom line year after year after year. Another thing is professional development opportunities like an online course. So maybe it's going to cost $500 to attend. That's something you might be prepared to take and offer as a compromise when working with your manager. Another item is when you're working for these companies, a lot of them, once again, are going to be public traded companies, meaning they have stocks. If they can't afford to give you a salary increase, something else that you might want to ask for are stock options, which are great because that turns into money and you can cash it out and take the cash. There's all different ways that you can look at it. Where if the money itself is not going into your paycheck every month, you want to ask, what other items might be of importance to me that allows me to still get more? Again, if you don't ask, if you're not an advocate for yourself, typically your manager is not going to proactively go to you and say, hey, this is what we're going to do for you, right? They're looking for people who are willing to say, this is what I deserve, and here's the reasons for it. If a raise isn't feasible at the time, ask for a specific timeline or objectives to achieve in order to revisit the conversation. If they say, this can't happen now, or maybe they say you haven't demonstrated enough to get that raise, have the conversation. Ask them, over the next year, what key objectives or goals can I try to reach? That will help us then we can have a conversation 1 year from now to see if I'm qualified for that raise, right? Now you have a list of what you need to do. It allows you to focus on what's important to your manager because they're now saying, this is what I need you to focus on. And when you have that meeting a year from now, and you have that list of accomplishments, I can't guarantee it, but if you've met those goals, there's a great chance that you're now going to get that raise. Always show appreciation and gratitude for the consideration and the opportunity to discuss your role's future in the company. Even if you don't get the raise, you want to be very appreciative. You want to say, thank you for listening to me. I understand that we're not in a good position right now and that we can revisit this conversation in 6 months. Can I put that in the calendar now so that we have the time already reserved for us to talk 6 months from now? Thank you again for your time. One thing that you also want to do is quit while you're ahead. If you already get them to yes, and they say, yes, based upon the information that you've provided to me, I think we can give you that 5% raise, then stop the conversation. Even if you've already practiced all of those things and reasons and they're put in your head and you just want to spit them out, it's not necessary. If you ever get them to say yes, simply say, thank you so much. I really appreciate you as my manager, and I appreciate you for taking the time to listen to me. And I just want to say thank you and just end it right there. Stop while you're ahead. You really want to practice this. You want to role play with a friend or a mentor. Rehearse your pitch to ensure you present confidently. You want to mind your body language, maintain a good posture, eye contact, and a steady tone to convey self-assuredness, which is going to come from being prepared, from having all of that information with you, and prepare mentally for any outcome. Whether the answer is yes or no, approach the conversation as a positive step for your career. I want to thank you for listening today. I hope you got some good tips. I would leave you simply with this. You need to be an advocate for yourself. Keep supporting documentation. Be tactful in your approach. Thank your manager and make sure you're fully prepared before entering the conversation. Thank you for joining today and have a good rest of your week. Thank you.